Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and realized you don't really know them anymore? That's what happened to me the day I looked at my own son. My name is Michael Turner. I'm 53 years old, born and raised in Ohio. For most of my life, I believed I had everything figured out. A stable job, a loving wife, and a son who I thought would grow up to be my proudest legacy. I used to think betrayal was something that happened to other people, not to fathers like me. But life has a way of humbling you. And sometimes, the people you trust the most can become the ones who teach you your hardest lesson. It started about 2 years ago. I had just retired early from my construction business after 25 years of hard work. I wasn't rich, but I had saved enough to live comfortably. My wife, Linda, had been my rock since college. Smart, patient, always keeping the family together. And our son, Ethan, was my pride. 24 years old, studying computer science at a university in Chicago. Quiet kid, but sharp. He didn't say much, but when he did, he meant it. We talked every week. Or at least we used to. Then one day, his calls got shorter. His texts became fewer. And whenever he did pick up the phone, there was this distance, like something was sitting between us. A wall that hadn't been there before. I blamed it on stress. College life, you know? Midterms, part-time jobs, maybe even a girlfriend he didn't want to talk about. But deep down, a father always knows when something's wrong. One evening, while I was sitting on the porch drinking coffee, Linda came out with this uneasy look on her face. "Michael," she said softly, "Ethan's been calling me a lot lately, but he doesn't want me to tell you what's going on." That hit me hard. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Like she already knew something she wasn't ready to share. I laughed it off at first. "He's a grown man now," I said. "Probably just doesn't want his old man meddling in his life." But that night, I couldn't sleep. There was a strange ache in my chest, a quiet voice telling me something was off. Weeks passed. Linda started spending more time on her phone, stepping outside to take calls in private. She said she was talking to Ethan, but I noticed she'd always lower her voice when I walked into the room. And when I'd ask what was wrong, she'd smile, that same smile she gave when she didn't want to answer. I trusted her. I trusted them both. Then one Friday, Ethan suddenly showed up at home, unannounced. He looked different, thinner, tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He hugged his mother first, then me, a short, awkward embrace. Something had changed. At dinner, the silence was loud. He barely touched his food. His eyes darted toward Linda, then back to his plate. Finally, I broke the silence. "So how's school? Grades still good?" He nodded. "Yeah, it's fine." But that wasn't Ethan's fine. That was the kind of fine people say when they're falling apart inside. After dinner, he asked to talk to his mother privately. I heard their voices in the living room, muffled, tense. When I walked in, they stopped talking. You ever walk into a room and know they'd been talking about you? Yeah, that was that moment. That night, I went to bed pretending everything was normal. But something told me it wasn't. So the next morning, while Ethan was asleep, I checked the mailbox. It wasn't something I'd ever done before, but something pushed me to. There was a letter addressed to Linda Turner, marked confidential. It was from a law office in Chicago. I stood there holding it, my hands shaking. Law office? Why would my wife be getting mail from a lawyer in my son's city? I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I placed it back exactly where it was and tried to act normal. But later that evening, when Ethan left to visit a friend, Linda cornered me. "Did you touch my mail?" she asked sharply. Her tone, it wasn't the soft, loving voice I knew. It was defensive, almost scared. "No," I lied. But her eyes told me she didn't believe me. Days later, Ethan went back to Chicago. Linda said she needed to clear her head and went to stay with her sister. And just like that, the house that once felt like home turned silent. I tried calling Ethan. No answer. I texted Linda. She read my messages, but didn't reply. That's when I started realizing I wasn't just being left out. I was being shut out. Something big was happening. And I was the only one who didn't know the truth. A week later, a package arrived at my doorstep. No name, no return address, just a simple brown envelope. Inside it were photos. Dozens of them, photos of my wife. And another man, not just random pictures. These were intimate moments, dinner, coffee shops, a hotel lobby. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My hands trembled as I flipped through the photos. And then, at the bottom of the envelope, there was a note, a single handwritten message. You deserve to know the truth. No signature. But I didn't need one, because the handwriting, it was Ethan's. I just stood there, staring at that note, the photos scattered across the table. My own son, he had known. He had seen everything, and never told me why. Why would he keep it from me? Why would he let me live in ignorance, pretending everything was fine? That night I sat alone in the dark. The walls felt closer. The house felt smaller. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know who to be angry at. My wife, my son, or myself. Because maybe deep down I had seen the signs. Maybe I had just chosen not to look, and that's how it all began. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly, through silence, through secrets, through the people I loved most. I didn't know it then. But Ethan's silence, his decision not to show me the truth, wasn't just betrayal, it was the beginning of his revenge. The night I found that envelope, something in me broke, but something else, something darker, woke up. I kept staring at Ethan's handwriting on that note. You deserve to know the truth. I couldn't decide if it was an act of mercy or cruelty. Because if he wanted to tell me the truth, why didn't he just call me? Why hide it, photograph it, and then drop it on me like a bomb? That question ate at me for days. Linda came home 3 days later, pretending like nothing had happened. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and asked if I'd eaten dinner. I looked at her and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. Where's Ethan? I asked quietly. She hesitated. He's busy with school. But her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. I wanted to throw the photos on the table, make her look at what she'd done. But I didn't, not yet, because something in me wanted answers first. I needed to understand why my son had chosen to expose her this way, and why he'd chosen to hurt me in the process. The next morning, I drove to Chicago. I didn't tell Linda where I was going. It was a 4-hour drive, but it felt like a lifetime. The entire way there, I replayed every memory I had of Ethan. His first baseball game, his graduation, the night he cried after his first heartbreak. He was my boy, my only child, and yet now, I didn't even know if I recognized him anymore. When I reached his apartment building, I sat in the car for nearly 10 minutes, just staring at the front door. Then I finally walked up and knocked. He opened the door and froze. He wasn't expecting me. "Dad," he said, his voice quiet, uncertain. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The place was a mess. Empty pizza boxes, papers on the floor, half-packed bags by the couch. "What's going on, Ethan?" I asked. He looked down, avoiding my eyes. "I'm fine, just dealing with stuff." "Stuff?" I said, my voice tightening. "You mean the stuff involving your mother? The man she's been seeing behind my back?" His shoulders stiffened. I could see it in his face. He knew exactly what I was talking about. He sat down, rubbing his hands together. "I didn't want you to find out like that," he muttered. "Then why send me those photos?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, he looked up and said, "Because you wouldn't have believed me otherwise." I blinked. "Believed you? Ethan, you're my son. I would have believed anything you said." He gave a bitter laugh. "No, Dad, you wouldn't. You never believed me when it came to her." That hit hard. "What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, eyes red with anger. "You remember when I was 16? When you two almost got divorced for a few months? You said it was just a rough patch. But I saw her then, Dad. I saw her sneaking around talking to someone behind your back. I tried to tell you, and you told me to stop making up stories." I froze. Memories flashed back. The late-night arguments, Linda's sudden trips to see her sister, the excuses, and Ethan, standing in the hallway listening. I had brushed him off back then, told him he was just confused. He stared at me now, eyes full of tears and fury. You didn't want to see it then, so I showed you now. I didn't know what to say. How do you respond when your son tells you that your blindness made him turn into the person holding the knife? I sat down, exhausted. Ethan, I get that you were hurt, but this isn't the way to handle it. He shook his head. You don't get it, Dad. This wasn't just about you knowing. It was about her knowing that I knew. He stood up and began pacing. She thought she could lie forever, pretend everything was fine. She used to tell me not to burden you with adult problems. She made me part of her secret, Dad. I hated it. I hated watching you smile every day while she was meeting another man behind your back. His voice cracked again. So yeah, I sent those photos. I wanted her to feel the same fear, the same shame that I carried for years. That's when I realized Ethan's revenge wasn't meant for me. It was for her, but I was the weapon he used to deliver it. Still, something about it didn't add up. Those photos weren't taken by accident. They were recent, fresh. He hadn't just stumbled onto them. He had followed her. How long have you been watching her, Ethan? I asked. He hesitated, then whispered, a few months. A few months, I repeated, my voice shaking. You've been stalking your own mother. She's the reason you almost lost everything, he shouted. She deserved to be exposed. I stepped closer, trying to control my breathing. You don't get to decide what anyone deserves, Ethan. You think revenge fixes pain. It just spreads it. He laughed bitterly. Yeah, maybe it does. But at least now she knows what it feels like. There was silence. Just the sound of the city outside, the traffic, the hum of a passing train. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised to be honest, kind, and decent, and I saw a man who'd been carrying anger for years. Anger I had ignored. Ethan, I said softly, you could have told me. You didn't have to destroy us. He turned away. You destroyed yourself when you refused to see the truth. Those words, they cut deeper than any photo ever could. I left that night without saying another word. Driving back to Ohio, I kept thinking, maybe he was right. Maybe I had been blind. Maybe I had built my life on a lie and called it family. But what I didn't realize then was that Ethan wasn't done. That envelope, those photos, they were just the beginning of something much bigger. Because while I was trying to make sense of the betrayal, Ethan was setting something else in motion, something far more destructive. He wasn't just exposing the truth, he was planning to make sure neither of us could hide from it ever again. The next week, I received another letter. This time it was addressed to both Linda and me. Inside was a single flash drive. No note, no message, just the words written on the label, "Watch Together." I didn't know it yet, but what was on that drive would tear our world apart. And for the first time, I started to realize my son's revenge wasn't just against her, it was against both of us. The flash drive sat on the kitchen table for almost 2 days. Neither Linda nor I wanted to touch it. Every time I looked at it, my chest tightened, because I knew whatever was on it wasn't meant to bring peace. It was meant to hurt, but deep down I also knew we couldn't run from it anymore. So on the third night, I plugged it into the laptop. Linda sat across from me, her face pale, her hands trembling. For the first time in months, we weren't pretending. We were just two broken people waiting for the truth to finish what it started. The screen flickered on. A video file appeared, just one, titled, "For Mom and Dad." When I pressed play, Ethan's face filled the screen. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his voice calm but heavy. "Mom, Dad," he began, "I know what this is going to do to you, but I need you both to see what your choices have done to me." Linda gasped softly, covering her mouth. Ethan took a long breath. "For years, I watched you two fall apart and pretend it was normal. You fought behind closed doors, smiled in public, and called it love. You both lied, not just to each other, but to me. And I learned to lie too. He paused, staring directly into the camera. When I was 16, Mom, I saw you with that man. I tried to tell Dad, but he said you'd never do something like that. And Dad, you told me that sometimes it's better to keep peace than face pain. That's what I grew up believing, that silence was safety. He leaned forward, his eyes wet. But silence is poison. It doesn't keep peace. It kills it slowly. The screen cut to clips, videos, photos, and recordings. Ethan had recorded everything. Conversations between him and Linda, her excuses, her guilt, even a voicemail where she confessed to making mistakes she couldn't undo. Linda broke down in tears beside me, whispering, "Oh God. Oh God, Ethan." But then the video shifted, and suddenly I was on screen. It was an old recording. I was sitting in my office years ago, talking on the phone. Ethan must have recorded it secretly. In the call, I was arguing with a client, angry, shouting, frustrated, and then I heard myself say something that made my blood run cold. I said, "I don't care if it's unsafe, just get it done. I'm not losing this contract." Ethan froze the video right there and spoke again. "Dad, you remember that job, right? The one where 2 workers got injured because the scaffolding collapsed. You told me it wasn't your fault, but I found the reports. You cut corners to save money." My heart sank. He'd gone digging through my past, through my mistakes I had buried long ago. Ethan's voice grew quiet. "You both lied to me in different ways. Mom lied about love. You lied about integrity. And I grew up thinking lies were just part of life. That you could cover pain with smiles, hide guilt behind excuses." He looked straight into the camera again. "So I decided to teach you what truth really feels like." The screen went black. Then words appeared. "The truth doesn't destroy people. It exposes who they really are." And that was it. The video ended. Linda was sobbing uncontrollably now. I just sat there, motionless, staring at the dark screen, hearing my own heart pound in my chest. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't cursed. He hadn't broken anything. But he had done something far worse. He had shown us ourselves. Over the next few days, we barely spoke. The silence in the house was unbearable. It wasn't just grief. It was realization. Linda finally confessed everything. How the affair had started years ago. How it ended but never truly went away. She said she didn't tell me because she wanted to protect the family. But now that word, family, felt empty. I confessed too. The shortcuts I'd taken in business. The things I'd hidden to keep my image clean. And for the first time in decades, I saw who I really was. Not a victim, not a saint, but a man who'd built his life on half-truths. Weeks passed. Ethan didn't answer our calls. He'd vanished. Deleted his social media, changed his number. I called the university, but they said he'd withdrawn from classes. No forwarding address, no contact, just gone. At night, I'd sit in his old room, look at the posters, the photos, the things he left behind, and I'd wonder if he ever planned to come back, or if his revenge was to make us live with what he'd shown us, forever. A month later, I received one last envelope in the mail. No return address again, just my name. Inside was a single piece of paper with one sentence written in Ethan's handwriting. "You don't fix lies by revenge, Dad. You fix them by truth." That was all. No anger, no hate, just a lesson. From the son I thought I knew. It's been a year since then. Linda and I separated. We still talk sometimes quietly, like two people who share a scar. I don't blame her anymore, not entirely, because I finally understood something Ethan was trying to show us. Betrayal doesn't start with cheating or lying. It starts the moment we stop telling the truth about who we are. I tried to reach Ethan again. Sent letters, emails, nothing. But I still keep that flash drive in a drawer. Not as a reminder of revenge, but as a reminder of honesty. Because his revenge didn't ruin me. It woke me up. Sometimes we think revenge will make us feel better, that exposing someone, hurting them back, will fix the pain. But the truth is, revenge doesn't heal anything. It just passes the pain to someone else. Ethan's revenge changed everything, not because he destroyed us, but because he showed us ourselves. He forced us to face what we'd been running from for years, and maybe that was the only way we could ever be free. So if you're listening to this right now, remember this. Truth hurts, yes, but lies destroy slowly. If you love someone, tell them the truth, even when it's ugly. Because silence isn't peace. It's just the calm before everything falls apart.